My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What up, Night Nation? It's your boy Roger, and welcome back to episode number 134 of the Night of Ones podcast. As a reminder, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous, yes, that's infamous rapper, a resident influencer, and IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70 plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle. Guys, we're like a week away, a little over, but just about a week away. September 3rd, we welcome our Knights into the newly renovated Bounce House. So super excited for that. We're going to talk and get you ready for the season. We're going to start with a player breakdown by our very own Alan Levin, who has assured me that he's finally up to speed. His baby has kept him up long enough that he had time to study, so we're excited about that. We'll do a position breakdown, talk about continuity. Is there going to be a UCF fast in the season? What are the linemen doing? We're going to talk about what the predictions are for all of the major news outlets, our own projections. We'll talk about bowl projections. And then we'll talk about a few other things. There's controversy brewing as we speak about former NFL players that have signed contracts that are trying to come back. So there's a lot of back and forth going on about that. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about the stadium unveiling, what the lane train is doing to college football, and we'll get your commentary and have an update about our women's soccer team, men's too, but the women's soccer team, who is now ranked number 14 in the country and have had a great start to the season. That being said, let me go ahead and bring to the stage the one, the only, the very tired Adam Levin.
How's it going?
What up, Alan?
How are you? Good to be back. It's been a while.
I'm doing great, man. It's season time. Let's go. So to start the season off right, let's go ahead and get that hair flip. Ooh. There it is. All right, Alan's truly back. Alan, you're going to start us off. We're going to talk a little bit about where this team is now post camp. We talked about spring camp, where we thought we were there, who was standing out at that time. And now we've got, camp is pretty much over. We're getting ready to go into game prep week. The team actually had a little bit of celebration of sorts recently by going to Universal. We can say that now, unlike before, that went to Universal to go have a lot of fun and to kind of blow off some steam. But what I'd like to start with is, as far as the camp standouts are concerned, we've seen a lot of media. Who do you see as the top players coming out of camp? And was there any change or surprises for you for the players that we see coming out of camp?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been some names that have been floating out there, whether it's media who get their short amount of time to view practices, or just you start looking at the coaches' interviews, and even the players themselves who are getting a lot of the upperclassmen get their time. I went back and I watched the UCF media day that was at the Cowboys stadium in Dallas there, and a common name that keeps coming out, and I don't think it's necessarily a surprise, but the one is freshman on offense, Tyron Horns. He's getting rave reviews. I mean, we know UCF has produced some really good wide receivers in their freshman year, whether it's a Dredrick Snelson, there's a bunch of names, Traquan Smith, Gabe Davis, all had really strong freshman seasons. But Tyron Horns is really making waves in practice with some acrobatic catches, and he's already projected to be on the 2 deep. And UCF does have a lot of veterans at wide receiver, whether it's the transfers or guys returning like Dwayne Thomas. So it's a fairly deep room this year. And the fact that he's kind of breaking through as a freshman, I'm really excited about him. So I think he's a name to really watch as a freshman. Maybe not be a huge surprise given that he's a 4-star prospect. But at the same time, for him to crack the 2 deep pretty much immediately here is pretty impressive, considering also he was a late signing at the end of the 2026 class there. So that's someone I'm really, really excited about at wide receiver.
All right. What about the rest of the position groups? Were there any position groups that are standing out more to you than others? So I know we were strong at linebacker. Our backfield is really, really strong. So expecting big things there. A certain Caleb Flagg, however, was stood out in camp and was talked about as having the most turnovers in both spring and summer camp. So that's a name you haven't heard much about, given how stacked we've been in the DB room. But he's making waves as a safety. What other position groups are stronger than you expected, and some things that you've heard about other guys that are really standing out?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that UCF has improved vastly in almost every single position group. And I don't say that lightly or as a homer. And I know maybe if you compare it to last year, it's kind of easy to say that given all the turnover last year, new coaching staff, 70 new players that's been talked about a bunch of times. But, I think to me, what stands out is the offense is clear cut better, but outside of offensive line, I would say there's 2 position groups that I would say either regressed or stayed the same. One would be offensive line, and then the other would be, I would say, defensive line, just losing a guy like Malachi Lawrence in the first round and Nigel Kelly. You're not going to be better there. Maybe they're about on par or a little bit worse, but offense has really impressed me. I mean, from quarterback, running back, and wide receiver and tight end, they're just better in every way, shape, or form. But what really has stuck out to me is defensively. I think this team, who was already top 4 in the conference statistically last year defensively in yards allowed, passing yards allowed, and a bunch of different metrics, I think this defense got better. Outside of losing the 2 guys I just mentioned, Lawrence and Kelly, this defense is going to be better. The secondary is absolutely stacked. It's everyone pretty much from last year outside of like a Philip Dunham is returning. I think the secondary got vastly improved, not only from returning, but also some of the transfers we got. And then, also linebacker, like you said, very, very strong. The other name, though, that I'd like to mention, and again, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a major surprise, but it's worth noting, is Horace Lockett. This is a guy that came in with a lot of hype from Georgia Tech, last year, but he only played 4 games. He got injured. Getting him back, if you may recall, early on in the offseason, he was going to transfer. He was in the portal, but UCF was able to get him back. He's going to have an absolute monster year. I would be as bold to say I think he will be first team all conference this year. I think he's looked really good. He's getting rave reviews from the defensive line coach, from Coach Frost, and has looked really, really good in camp. He's healthy, and if he stays healthy, I can honestly see him being one of the top 3 defensive tackles in the entire Big 12. So I would definitely, want to call out him. And then, overall, though, I think every position group is better outside of, like I said, offensive line.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that D line is we had 2 guys injured last season. There was also our Tulsa guy that was doing really, really well. Talk about him a little bit more about him. He was a transfer from Tulsa. He absolutely was like manhandling at defensive tackle. We lost John Walker last year to the transfer portal. But how do you think that interior line is going to hold up?
No, I feel good about the interior line. You're talking about R.J. Jackson. Obviously, R.J. Jackson Jr. transferred in from Tulsa. Had a pretty, I would say underrated, kind of quiet first season at UCF, but he was super solid. If you remember, he was actually a Big 12 honorable mention last year. He played in all 12 games, started all of them last year. 33 tackles. I think he had 3 sacks. Was a big part of that defensive line last year. So I do think the defensive front is going to hold up. I don't think it's super deep outside of, the 2 starters there in Jackson and Horace Lockett. But overall, I do think it's a good group. Remember, we did also get a transfer from Brad Gurley, who had a pretty monster year for FCS Eastern Kentucky. We got a couple other transfers: Thomas Collins, Josh Shell, who played a little bit at Tennessee, as well as Grand Valley State. So, I mean, there are some names there. I don't think it's super deep, but I do think it's going to hold up well. When you look at the two starters, I would say that RJ and Horace are two of the better players on defense, if not two of the best players on defense. So I feel pretty good about that. I'm more concerned at defensive end. You have obviously the big losses, and then we're really putting a lot of our eggs in the Isaiah Nixon basket. Obviously, he's been in the program for 4 years now. He's really, one of those rare players that stayed and waited his turn, to play, and he's poised to kind of take over, the starting edge, and he'll be across from Sincere Edwards. I think that's a good duo. Don't get me wrong, Nixon and Edwards. Edwards was probably on his way to having a breakout year, but of course he got injured. But if Nixon can kind of, have that 4 year of development and really mature, and he's been basically behind two NFL players now for the last 2 years, I think we look good there. But I just can't see that they don't fall off at least a little bit when you talk about losing a first round pick and another NFL player at the position. But I feel pretty good overall about up front there.
Okay. Yeah, and there's going to be something to watch. I've heard good things about Isaiah Nixon. I don't think he's obviously going to be 5-star quality like what we had before,
No.
but I've heard good things. So that's one side of that line. Another, you mentioned Collins. Collins has been a name that's been popping up quite a bit, actually, out of camp as well. And then if you can talk a little bit about him, and then maybe also give us an update on Sincere Edwards. He had been going back to practice. He was a guy that came to us and originally committed to us, ended up going to Pitt, came back from Pitt, was getting starting reps there, got injured, and then had a foot injury that he was recovering from that kind of kept him out, or it kept him out of camp for a while. So give us a little update about Collins, and then also about Sincere Edwards.
Yeah, Sincere is looking like he's going to be fully healthy heading into the season next week, and they're expecting big things out of Sincere Edwards. I mean, this is a 4-star guy, played at Wekiva High, in Central Florida. Like you said, went to Pitt. Actually, had a pretty good freshman year. I think it was one of I want to say 9 freshmen on the whole team to play that year for Pitt. So they had very few freshmen play, and he was one of them. And he was a playmaker for them. I mean, he was obviously in reserve, but he was rotated in a lot. And then last year he was a bona fide starter for us until he got injured after week 4. But he's looking healthy, and they are expecting absolutely him to kind of live up to that 4-star expectation. I think when you look at the talent we lost there, having a blue chip recruit like Sincere Edwards, who has already proven it in small spurts that he could do it, is big. And he's going to be healthy heading into the season. Like you said, he did have to miss some time in spring, recovering, and also summer as well. But he's been back for fall. And I think he's poised to, have a really, really good season if he could stay healthy. And then Thomas Collins, yeah, I mean, this is a guy probably a little bit unheralded. He was at Oregon State as a redshirt sophomore last year, but he did start all 12 games for, I guess they're not Power 4 anymore, but Oregon State, decent program. He was a guy that led their team in sacks and had a pretty strong year there. And this year, I think he was already named to like one of the watch lists. He looks good. I'm hearing good things about Collins, at least to be, a guy that is heavily rotated in, maybe even sneak into a starting defensive tackle spot in certain spots of the season if necessary. But he's going to be good for UCF. And I think UCF also went with guys in the portal that played. This is not the Gus type transfers that were all just kind of hype. Most of these guys, whether it's a Brad Gurley, whether it's a Thomas Collins, they played at their previous stop. Some of them might have been FCS, some of them might have been in the group of 5, but overall, these are guys that have played and done pretty well. So I think Thomas Collins is like you said, has been hyped up for good reason.
Yeah, there's you're talking about injuries and the secondary specifically. We had some injuries from some people that had transferred in that we thought were going to be difference makers. They were for the first 3 or 4 games, and then ended up,
Got injured though. Yeah.
ended up with some injuries, which then ended up meaning they didn't get any playing time later on. So why don't you talk a little bit about those guys? We mentioned DJ Bell earlier and a bunch of those folks that are standing out, but talk about the folks that were injured last year that you expect to have an impact this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sincere Edwards is definitely one of those guys. The other one that comes to mind right away is Day Farmer. Again, this very similar to a Sincere Edwards in the fact that he was an Orlando guy, in high school, recruited by UCF, committed to UCF, ultimately decommitting and going to West Virginia, spends a year there, and then comes back home to UCF. He redshirted there at West Virginia, and I think he only had like 3 catches. But last year, if you recall, going into camp, he was widely expected to be one of the starters. This is before we knew who Dwayne Thomas was, or we didn't know how Waden Charles was going to be as a freshman. So Day was widely expected to be a starter, and that's this year is the same case. I think he's probably looking like he's going to be more in a backup position, but could potentially go into starting. He's healthy this year, and he's going to be a big part of that receiving core. I think this is one of the deepest receiving cores. I was very critical of the receiving core the last 2-3 years, ever since Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson graduated. It's been kind of weak. There's been reasons, obviously, inconsistent quarterback play and things like that. But I feel really good about the receiving core, and I think Day is going to be a huge part of it. So he was a guy that missed all of last year due to a leg injury that happened right in fall camp, unfortunately. But he's fully healthy and ready to go, and I see him as being potentially the starting slot receiver, if not someone that's going to be leaned on pretty heavily here.
Yeah, I definitely think you have for Day specifically. He was the guy that everybody was talking about in summer camp. So he was making circus catches, all of that other stuff. But then was injured. We were all disappointed early in camp late in camp before we were ready to go. So he was expected to be a starter. I think that wide receiver position is pretty stacked. As we think about the DBs, Braden Marshall's coming back. Another guy that's been with us. He was a 4-star guy, was a local guy. He's been with us for a long time. Seems to be, what I heard a lot was consistently good. He's not a guy that's going to be on the edges. He's going to be an inside guy that's going to be tracking folks, slot receivers and things like that. So he doesn't have as many opportunities, but he will sneak in on a blitz or something like that. Damari Henderson is another guys, one half of the Henderson twins. And Damari, again, was that borderline 4-star defensive back, came in with his brother. He stayed. Last year had a decent season. He was good, but from what everybody's saying, he's taken another step. So we're expecting him to be someone who stands out as well. Antoine Jackson is back, who had a solid season last season. DJ Bell. He's a ball hawk kind of player, so it'll be interesting. He played really, really well. 6'2", rangy, 185 pounds, a guy that can play the outside. Jaden Bellamy is back. He's been making a lot of noise. Now he comes to us by virtue of Syracuse and Notre Dame, which is crazy. So we're expecting to hear some noise on him and Jaden Williams. But DJ Bell, that one hurt last year. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Bell, like you said, he was, he's a ball hawk type player, was expected to be, a big part of UCF secondary. I look at him as definitely someone that is going to be a contributor, but I think more than him, you kind of already mentioned too, when we talk about guys that were injured last year, Jaden Williams, that is actually another person. I would be remiss if I didn't say he's been getting a lot of getting called out in camp for his performances so far. You may recall he was kind of the hero of the Jacksonville State game that was way too close for comfort. I think we won 17-10. and he made that major 4th down stop, and then he got injured in that game, and he tried to come back, I think against UNC, got injured again, and then missed a whole year. But Jaden Williams is projected to be one of the starting corners, looks, really, really good. And then Bellamy is, I think, arguably
he's just been consistently good.
Yeah. He's been really good. He's actually already been named to like Phil Steele's All-America watch list, a bunch of the, Athlon Big 12 preseason all conference teams. I think he's projecting to be one of the better DBs in the conference and potentially an NFL pick. But, I think we know about Bellamy. He's been good. He was good all of last year. Played in all 12 games, started, was, a real solid guy for us. But Williams is the one that's making a lot of noise. I think people forgot about him due to the injury and the fact that we have a pretty good secondary. But he's going to be making some waves this year I think as a starter, actually. And then DJ Bell is going to be there. I think he'll be more in a reserve role. But UCF has a lot of depth in their secondary. I don't think outside of Philip Dunham, pretty much everyone is back and healthy right now, including both Jadens, DJ Bell. You mentioned Damari Henderson, who's going to look really good. I'm really happy he stayed. His brother Jakari did end up transferring, but he wasn't playing too much. If you recall, Damari 2 years ago led UCF in interceptions. Last year, I would say fell off a little bit, but was solid. But this year, I think he's back and going to be one of our best safeties. So, but I think when you look about guys that were injured and unheralded, I would point to Jaden Williams as a guy that's going to surprise some people this year.
I'm going to go back to Caleb Flagg as well. He keeps getting mentioned, like we mentioned earlier, led both camps in turnovers and interceptions. But the thing that I don't think people realize, he's a little bit on the shorter side, right? He's 5'10", 200 pounds. He's going to be your stocky type of run stopper type guy. But he's also pretty good at creating turnovers and picking the ball. Now, what people don't realize about him is he transferred from Missouri. He was at Missouri first. So this is not a slouch as a player. Just because we haven't been talking about him very much doesn't mean he was a slouch as a player. He then transferred to Houston Christian because he wasn't getting the playing time he wanted at Missouri. And now we get him. So he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Seems to be flying around the ball, creating turnovers, etc. So I really do think he's going to get more run than most people think, even in this secondary. Whether he's helping more on the run stopping, I think his ability to stop the run is going to create opportunities for him in the secondary to create disruptions there. One of the biggest things that we heard coming out of camp is the focus that has been there on defense and getting turnovers, because that's one of the worst areas on defense last year. We had a great rush, but we didn't. Turnover margin sucked. Let's be real. It was one of the worst ones in the Big 12. We lost a lot of close games based on turnover margin. Now, you could say part of that is because we had a rotating carousel of quarterbacks. You can also say part of that is we didn't get enough turnovers. And quite frankly, I think it was more the latter than the former, although there were more than there were the previous year before that as far as turnovers are concerned. A lot of the same themes that you heard under George O'Leary, right? Or even Josh Heupel, get a hat on a hat. You know what I mean? Make sure that you're running to the ball defensively. I think that's a big component of it. And it seems like these guys are doing it. They seem like they're better conditioned. And then everything that I'm hearing is that they're doing what they need to do. Now, as far as Thomas Collins is concerned, the only concern I have with him on getting into the DT rotation is he's not as big. He's 6'1", 295. Now, I will say this. Our defensive line is actually top 10 in the country in size. We averaged 309 pounds, and I think it was like 6'5" on the average height on our defensive line. So that should tell you that this is although we've been struggling a little bit with the offensive line, defensive line, we have a true power 4 defensive line that we're going to be fielding this year. Now, speaking of the O-line, some of the comments we're hearing out of camp is the O-line specifically and the offense is ahead, way ahead of where they were last year. One thing that I think people forget is they were dealing with a pretty hefty loss last year. And I can't. Even Scott Frost said I couldn't deal with it during the season, but even if you couldn't emotionally deal with it during the season, it's still in the back of your mind. Plus, you had someone who was trying to come in as O-line coach to help that line kind of gel, and it just wasn't there. From all accounts, Blazek has kind of come in and done a great job in bringing that line together and doing it a lot more quickly than what we had last year. Although Paul Rubelt, surprisingly enough, is doing pretty well in preseason, getting snaps with Tampa. Outside of that, walk us through the offensive line a little bit, and help us understand why there should be optimism or not optimism, and really, do we need this offensive line to be that much better than last year, considering who we have at quarterback and the rest of the position groups?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. I would say we should not have optimism for the offensive line. I don't think, they did get a few transfers, but this is not a deep group. They're one or two injuries away from playing a guy that's, very little experience. I think the starting five is decent. I would say the big transfer they got was Henry Tabansi from Buffalo. There was multiple Power Four schools going after him. I don't know how we won that one. How we outbid or whatever, how we got him to come here. That's it. That was a big pickup. And obviously you do have some continuity coming back with Preston Cushman and Justin Royas and, Connor Meadows, some of these guys that, did play last year. You had a guy like Preston Cushman who started 12 games last year, and you have Owen Spell, who I believe started 4 or 5 games. Connor Meadows got in quite a few games. So there's some continuity. And then you talk about the transfers. Henry Tabansi is definitely the number one Buffalo, 306 pounds. He's a monster, like I said. And then Brady Wayburn, there's some excitement from him. UConn, he also had a lot of Power 5 looks, 6'5", 305 pounds. And then there was some more unheralded transfer, like a Cooper Terpstra, didn't play a lot at Michigan State, a Tyler Gibson, who didn't play a lot at Charlotte. I don't think, though, this is a very deep group when you look at it. And we know the offensive line was not good last year. It had some strengths. In the pass blocking last year, they were decent. Actually, I think towards the top.
Run blocking was really week after week was the problem, right? Was
the problem
was
by far. It was exactly. I think the offensive line objectively is a little bit better than last year, just by the addition of Tabansi. I think alone, he's a guy that could be all conference. But I don't honestly, even AJ Blazek's comments, they've lightened up, but he made a few comments, and I don't know, I think they went kind of under the radars when he first got here and was talking about the offensive line. He kind of almost implied like, well, this is the group I got. It wasn't like, hey, this group's awesome. I think they have gelled more as he's been there through spring and summer, but I don't think there's, I would say, a huge amount of optimism around this offensive line. But like you said, when you have a quarterback, that we have in Barnett, Alonzo Barnett, who can run, who can scramble. I mean, this is a guy that has, rushed for well over, whatever it is, 1,000 yards in his career. I think he had like 15 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. That helps. I mean, he could scramble. We know, Taven Jackson, Cam last year, they could sort of scramble. I wouldn't call them traditional like scrambling QBs or traditional dual threats. They had some wheels, but not on the level of Alonzo Barnett. So I do think that will help. But at the same time, I don't want Alonzo Barnett running for his life every play either. So I do have concerns. I do think the one thing that could really hold UCF back this year from taking a jump from a 5-win team to potentially, let's call it an 8-win team, would be that offensive line. Because I really genuinely feel a lot better about almost every position group on this team compared to last year. But offensive line, I don't feel great about. I mean, I think, again, like I said, they're 1 or 2 injuries away, which, offensive line guys, they get injured, from really starting some guys that have zero experience, zero proof that they can, do it at this level. So it is a concern, but I do think they've gelled a little bit more. I think they do have a little bit of continuity coming back, more so compared. I mean, if you think about the last 2-3 years, the starting 5 has almost completely turned over, like almost 2 years in a row. So this is the first year where they probably have about 3/5 of their starting offensive line back. But you also said, like, they dealt with a tragedy. There was a lot of things last year, and I think the fact that we have wide receivers that can get separation now, and a much, much, much better quarterback than any of the 4 we threw out there last year, can maybe cover up some of those gaps or cover up some of those deficiencies that we may see in the offensive line.
Well, the other thing is speed. That's one of the things that could help there as well. I mean, I'll say, like, Preston Cushman last year actually had some decent run game numbers.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing and what I'm hearing about them is they're able to get to the second level a little bit better. The run game is more complex than pass blocking, and the reason for that is because with the run game, you're moving guys, you're shifting guys, they're trailing each other so that they can create mismatches in the O-line, whether it's the A gap, B gap, whatever run scheme you're running. The goal is for those guys to be able to shift in sync. That means the other guys have to pick up an extra blocker. And so it's a lot more complicated of a scheme in the run game. And they didn't do well last year. So kind of run through some of the folks that we're talking about. Connor Meadows last year, 54.1 PFF for the season. Owen Spell, 59.8. But Jacob Miava in limited role. He was a rotational player. He actually had an 85.0 run blocking grade. So I think one of the things that we were missing last year was a coach consistently that could get these guys to play in sync in the run game. And that's really what hurt us, because we got up big and we couldn't slow the game down to take advantage of leads. And then the other problem was on the road. UCF was a different team on the road than they were at home. They gave up 170 yards per game on average on the road last year, which that has to be better. As vaunted as our D-line was, as good as our linebackers were, it's still 170 yards rushing, which is an awful lot. I mean, you look at Sorsby last year when we played Sorsby, who's no longer in college football, thankfully. He didn't really beat us with the passing game. He was just able to scramble and beat us with his feet a little bit. So we've got to be better at containment this year to be successful. The O-line has to be better at the running game, whether it's a zone block scheme, whatever that's going to be, because it's going to be a little bit more traditional than what we had last year. I feel like the other thing is we were rotating quarterbacks, and they're all a little bit different as far as timing, release, what they like to do in the pocket, and that O-line has to account for that. And when the receivers don't get open, especially on passing downs, that means that, for about a good 3 to 4 seconds, it's going to take for a receiver to get open. And we didn't have receivers that were getting open and beating their defender very well, which means that you have more time for the defense to lock them down and less time for the offensive line to protect the QB. So that's going to be a huge part of this season, is if they get the separation, they can get the ball out quickly. That's going to be a huge advantage, and will open up the run game, because if you have to take a blocker or a guy out of the road, we talked about this with Trey and Derry and his ability to create separation. if we can take a defender out of the box, that opens up the run game a lot more. We really couldn't do that. And they can keep everything last year within probably 30 yards in front of them, which means you could sneak guys into the box defensively playing against our offense. So that 54 average PFF grade last year for that offensive line in the running game was terrible. It was 106th, 106th in FB out of, or no, I'm sorry, 105th out of 136 FBS teams last year. That's how poor our run blocking was. And when that happens and you have a combination of people that can't get separated, what do you see? You see a lot of passes going to the tight end because they can create separation more easily with mismatches by moving guys around and scheming those guys open and getting that ball out. So that's what you saw a lot of last year. This year, what I'm expecting out of that offensive line is with a good coach, consistent coaching, and some decent returners. I'm expecting the running game to be more potent. If the running game is more potent, that's going to buy more time. And if the receivers can get open and we've got a quarterback who can consistently get the ball there, that's going to take defenders out of the box. And when you take defenders out of the box, that opens up your running game. And I'm very pleased with our backfield. I think there's going to be some guys that have some big years this year. I think we've got a really, really good stable in the running back room. And I do think they're gonna make a difference. I mean, even RJ Harvey, when he was running, some of that was RJ Harvey. It wasn't all the line opening up those. A lot of it was he was tough to get down, and once he got into open space, he could make you miss. And once you got open to space, that was over. So I think we've got that type of running back. I think we've got a coach who has been consistently coaching them, which will help in the more complicated run schemes. Now, the one thing that we have been known for under Scott Frost since he got here the first time was UCF fast. So there's big questions on how much speed is going to be incorporated into what we do. From what I understand, and having known some people that have watched at practices that are larger donors than me, and some that are former players, from what I understand, they are working on more speed and incorporating more speed into what we do. It doesn't mean we're going back to UCF fast, folks, but it does mean that we may lean on that a little bit more, especially situationally on games. The challenge with that is, from what I hear from practice, is that when they've had scrimmages and they've gone fast, they've had false starts. So one of the things that we're going to have to watch out for, at least at the beginning of the season, is can they get that timing down to be able to use the speed effectively. Conditioning is a lot better for this team than it was last year's team. From what I understand, they've been a lot more motivated in the weight room, which will also help. And we've got guys with a bunch of chips on their shoulder. Will that translate? Can we have enough control to make that be a weapon of lethality for us? So that's going to be a big question for me coming out of that position in those position groups as well. So if we were going to pick the first team offense, Alan, who would you name as who do you expect to take the field as first team offense throughout the first three games?
Yeah, I mean, I want to, kind of just piggyback one thing. I mean, I think this is definitely the most excited I've been about a UCF receiver group since, I would say, probably 2022. I think it's a lot deeper and better than it's been in quite some time. And then running back, Scott Frost, I mean, has actually now made a point. I think I've heard 3 separate interviews where he said he obviously gives Miles Montgomery and Jaden Nixon their flowers, but he keeps saying how much more talented this group is, specifically Duke Watson and Landon Chambers. So this offense is, I think, night and day. I think that was our big thing last year, right? Our defense was pretty damn good, and our offense was bad. It just was quite bad. They could not move the ball down the field. They couldn't score effectively. But this year, I think it's way better. If you were to ask me, though, who I think, is going to take the field to start. Obviously, quarterback, no question. We have Alonzo Barnett as the clear-cut starter, no questions there. At running back, it's hard to choose between a Duke Watson, Landon Chambers. I feel it's going to be that or situation. But the name that I think will be there first, I would put my money on Landon Chambers. I feel like I know Duke Watson probably, is the bigger name just because he came from a Power 4 school versus Landon Chambers, who came from FCS. But I think Landon Chambers fits more what this offense trying to do. I mean, he's a bowling ball. I mean, this guy's like a 5'10", 215-pound type guy. I think he's going to be that guy that can absorb, the three downs, and be that guy. I feel like he'll be the starting running back, but that doesn't mean Duke Watson won't, be getting plenty of carries himself. I mean, how many times have we seen a Frost offense where he uses multiple running backs, whether it's Adrian Killens and Otis Anderson and Greg McCray and Bentavious Thompson, guys like that over the years. So I would put my money on Landon Chambers getting the starting nod. Then at receiver, I think
hold on. What about Tavion Swint? How do you think he factors in there?
Swint, as we know, suffered an untimely injury last year. And he's a 4-star guy. I think we all want him to be good. We all want him to be, he's a guy that we recruited, and he stayed after last year. It was definitely, I would say, probably Frost's biggest name offensive get out of high school in his first class. Had offers from like LSU, a bunch of big programs. I think he'll be in the mix, but I don't think he's going to be a starter. I think he'll be one of those guys, maybe kind of a change of pace type of back that gets in. He'll get his reps, but I don't think there's any question it's going to be heavily dominated by Chambers and Watson. I mean, do you disagree?
No, but I do think my challenge, I won't say problem because it's not a problem to have Chambers and Watson. Watson's been out for a bit, right, with his injury. So which Watson are we getting? Landon Chambers, I'd love it if you go back over some stats and remind people how good of a running back he was at his previous stop. I mean, we're talking like national
1,200 yards and like just under 1,200 yards. 10 is a beast, no question about it. Huh?
Yeah. Well, we lost you there for a second. You went robot and
sorry, I was saying that Chambers was a beast. I mean, he had, I think, 1,200 yards and 10 TDs last year. He was all first team. I think it's UTC is their conference. I forgot the full name, but yeah, he was all first team last year, 10 TDs. I mean, yeah, he was a beast. So I think, getting a guy like that, and we've seen that before. I mean, we know like Jaden Nixon at Western Michigan was very similar, had something like 1,300 yards and 10 or 11 scores. And then, he didn't get, obviously Miles Montgomery got the lion's share of it. But when Jaden Nixon came in, we saw how explosive he was, whether that was in special teams and punt returning or even just, when he'd get the ball, when they feed him the ball, he would break off a lot of runs. But Chambers is more of like an every down type of back. And he was a beast last year. So I do think it is worth noting how good he is.
Yeah, I think Swint is and Defalk here. Thanks for joining us again, my man. Although I'm not as down on the O-line as I think you might be, based on what I'm hearing. That being said, yeah, Tavion Swint, local product, a guy that we wanted, showing a lot of promise last year and then got injured. So, I mean, he kind of falls in the Duke Watson category. I don't know if Duke is going to be used more as a change of pace back. I think Landon Chambers be the guy with Duke, and then maybe Tavion Swint as the change of pace backs. I think that's what I expect to see more of. I mean, I think a lot of it will depend on how the first 3 games go. Obviously, not the first one, but the next 2 to see, especially at Pitt. I think that's going to tell us a lot about who's going to be able to step up and take hold of this running back slot. So I truly think I do think Swint is going to be maybe 2A, 2B. I think if I were to point it out, I'd say Landon Chambers is going to be 1A. And then Duke Watson 2B or 2A, and then 2B would be Tavion Sweat. But again, I haven't seen Watson since he's, come back. I mean, I've seen some clips of him, but I haven't seen him since he's come back.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's obviously the lingering injury concern with Duke, but we saw what he could do in his freshman year. UCF went out and got him for a reason. But yeah, I think it's a 1A, 1B type of situation that like I said, I'd lean towards Chambers. And then, wide receiver, again, I'm going to talk it up. So I think, when you look at the three likely starting wideouts, I think Dwayne Thomas and Waden Charles are pretty much a lock to get two of those. Then you look at the third spot, to me, is probably going to be a transfer. It's most likely, in my opinion, going to be Derry at Frost. Like I said, I rewatched the Big 12 media days. He talked up Derry a good amount. He actually said he was a little bit surprised of like how good he is and how fast he is. So I think Derry gets that other starting receiving spot. I mean, it could go to someone like a Jonathan Bibbs, but I would lean more towards Derry there. And then, like I said earlier, Day Farmer is going to be someone that will, definitely get some reps, and then Tyron Horns. But if you're talking about starters, I would lean towards Derry, Charles, and obviously Speedy Thomas.
Okay. Interesting comment here from DFOC. He says, can we all agree if backup QBs come in these first games, not Pitt, that Rocco needs to get the snaps? Yeah, like I agree. I think Rocco's got the most upside. And I think it's important for him too in this day and age to be able to get some snaps in. From what I see, and then what he's done in high school, I think he's got the most possibilities for next year. And I think you need to give him some opportunities, especially now that, there's been some rules changes. So we won't have a Tommy C situation anymore, which, by the way, screw Gus Malzahn for that one. No matter what you think of Tommy C, that was not cool. But at the end of the day, I do think that Rocco has kind of been separating himself. I'm not very impressed with the backups, like the guys that have a little bit of experience. So I think, especially in the first three games, I think Rocco should get some snaps, especially game one, 100%.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, I think he makes a good point, DFOC, that with the red shirt being gone, why not? There's no reason to preserve him, right? I mean, you're going to get 5 years. So, I'd like to see, it would be nice for UCF to not have a new transfer quarterback every single year. I get the methodology there. You're trying to get the best quarterback to win, but if, Rocco is truly as good as, he was on paper, and he can get some valuable reps this year, that would be great. I mean, for sure, over, a guy like the Boise State transfer who's probably not going to be here next year, right? Or the FIU.
I don't know. I don't know. He's actually, of the three or of the two, like, experienced guys, he's got the most buzz and noise going on. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not QB2.
Yeah, he does. I mean, but I like the idea of playing Rocco, keep him happy, get him some playing time. I mean, every player on the roster is always going to be a risk to transfer now, right? Just because it's so easy. But, with Barnett graduating after this year and the QB competition seemingly wide open, I'd like to see what, especially in a blowout game, I would love to see what Rocco Marriott could do at the end of games, even if it's garbage time, see what he can do. And, maybe, he has enough hype to, come out next season as the, on paper looking like he'll be a starter. I mean, last kind of thing I could think of that is like, Blake Bortles when he was our starter in 2013, and Justin Holman was getting in those garbage time minutes. And I know Holman didn't end up being great, but like we got a glimpse of the future there because we knew Bortles was, at the end of his tenure, whether it was his
Holman, other than his laser arms, was doing fairly well. I mean, he was a competent QB until he hurt himself off the court, or on the court, off the field.
No, that was DJ Mack that did that.
Oh, why do I always confuse Holman with DJ Mack? I don't know why.
No, Holman was solid though. I mean, he was a starter for 2 years roughly. So, so I think, but I would like to see Rocco play. I mean, there's nothing to lose there, unless they really think one of these other guys is going to be the starter next year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Keep going. So we've covered that. Tight ends. Tight ends is interesting because I think we've got added some depth with tight end as well. I guess we lost. I guess we lost Allen there. So as far as tight end is concerned, oh, he's back. So he'll be back. We do have some excitement around tight end. We have a couple of options for a pass catching tight end. Which should give us plenty. Like when we're thinking about the field, we've been talking about stretching the field so much. What we haven't been talking about is levels, right? And what you want to do is create problems for defenses. And one of the ways that you can do that is if you can develop plays and have good pass guys that can catch passes in the tight end position. Because if they stretch the field, one, that's going to pull guys out of out of the box. And if it pulls it out of the box, it opens up your running game on your option game, but it also allows you to stretch the field vertically. So if you get the defenders out of there, they're shading to one side of the field or the other. I think we've actually got good enough receivers that will create separation where they're going to have to make some decisions or pull that nickel position out of the box. Then, that creates opportunities for your tight end. And he was pretty much becoming our number one receiver. That position was our number one receiver last year. So as far as it being critical offensively for that to happen, that's I mean, in my mind, that tight end position is going to be more important than last year was even. All right, Alan's back, so I'm going to bring him back to the stage. All right, man. I've been trying to hold my own. I've been telling people about the tight end position and how we have some options there and why it's so important to have levels on the field. If you want to, who do you think is going to get the start at the pass catching, and who's going to be our tight end that's going to help us, in the run game? Because you've got Dylan Wade. Obviously, he's going to get some run. I think he's our starting guy. But Caden Peating is a guy who's been making a lot of noise in camp as a pass catching tight end as well. And the good news about him, he's a redshirt freshman. So what do you think, and who's going to be our primary running tight end that's going to help us with that?
Well, we know Dylan Wade is the starter. It's not even a question. I mean, he broke the record last year for most catches and most yards by a tight end in program history. Getting him back was one of the major wins of the offseason. It wasn't a guarantee that he wasn't going to transfer. So getting him back, I mean, he's clearly going to be the main. I think he's just going to be one of the main receiving threats in general, not just for a tight end. Just, he's going to be one of our. I mean, he led the team last year, or he didn't lead the team in yards, but I think he led the team in catches. So he's definitely there. And then I think you mentioned one of them, Caden Pining, but I think the other one is Grayson Brousseau. He's a redshirt sophomore that came in from Oklahoma State / Utah State. Didn't get a lot of play there, but big guy, 6'5", 6'6", 245 pounds. I'd look at him as going to be, one of their kind of primary blocking assets there at tight end. And I think Caden Pining, he's been in the program now a couple of years. He should get, some playing time. I think he redshirted last year. And then they brought in the Brooks Hall, freshman in the freshman class this past in the 2026 class. But I think it's going to be the trio of Wade, Brousseau, and Pining. With I think actually Brousseau will be more of the main guy after Wade.
I think the other one to watch out for that I think will get some play. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Derry at receiver. We've talked about Horns at receiver and seeing where we talk about Day. We haven't really talked about Jonathan Bibbs, and I think Bibbs is going to be a guy that's going to surprise some people there too. All right, so we've covered the O-line, we've covered the running backs, we've covered the QB as if there was any question other than getting Rocco some snaps. We've so that's pretty much the offense. Who do you think starts on the defensive side of the ball? Who are our starting linebackers specifically? Because we've had some interesting things happen there. For those that have been following the transfer saga, Cole Kozlowski, who came back, was trying to get an injunction, has lost in Orange County. We do not get the benefit of Louisiana or Mississippi judges in Orange County. Has lost his appeal, as has Dean Miller, the Kansas defender that we were hoping to bring on, that was very successful at Kansas last year. So both of those guys on the defensive side of the ball have lost their opportunity for an injunction, so they won't be part of that. What do you see? We kind of covered DBs earlier. What do you see? Who are going to be the starters in the linebacker position, maybe the night position, and then the D line?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Lewis Carter is back. He was probably the biggest breakout player on defense for UCF last year. He led the team in tackles. I believe he was all conference second team or third team last year. He's back. I mean, I expect him obviously to be the starting, weak side linebacker. The question is, who becomes the middle, linebacker, when we kind of thought it was going to be Kozlowski there for a second. UCF was posting photos of him at practice. Now, obviously, that doesn't look too good. I've been hearing a lot about Julio Colbreth. I think he's someone that could get that other linebacker position. If not, probably looking at the transfer portal, probably a guy like Tackett Curtis would be the one that would be across from Lewis Carter there, if it's not Colbreth. But I've heard some good things about him from our DC, Alex Grinch, that, he's looked really good in camp. Redshirt senior who transferred over this past offseason. So I, probably like him or a Tackett Curtis now that Kozlowski's likely out of the picture. But then Lewis Carter is going to lead that group. He was really, really good last year. One of the, I think UCF did a really good job with retention with most of their big players, and he was one of them. Lewis Carter was definitely one of our top defensive players, if not the top defensive players. Already been getting a lot of preseason buzz and love in the all the watch lists and the Senior Bowl watch list and all that type of stuff. So I feel pretty good about that. And then you had said, what was the other position group?
D-line specifically, but on the linebacker room, Arthur Kingdom. By the way, we'll talk about this a little bit later. There's been a lot of noise about professional players or guys who sign contracts professionally being able to come back from the NFL. And Arthur Kingdom did play in Europe professionally.
Great name, by the way.
I know, right? It's almost like it was written. It was written that way. He does have the ability to come back. This will not affect the new rules that are being adopted by the Big 12. This will not affect his eligibility, and he was a monster in Europe. So it'll be really interesting to see. He was kind of a later addition when it comes to that. We've got a lot of younger guys at linebacker, but there's a couple of guys that came through the transfer portal too. You mentioned Tackett Curtis. I think he's going to get more run. He came by way of Wisconsin and USC. So he's got good size, 6'2", 230. Would like to see a little more length on him.
And played under Alex Grinch, I believe, before.
He did, yeah, when he was at USC. He is a senior, so he's got a lot of time under his belt. Jane Jennings from Virginia Tech was also making some noise. Lewis Carter is so funny. Like he's definitely going to be the anchor. He's the voice. He's actually, one thing Frost said is he's kind of stepped up in that vocal role for the defense. But I don't know if you guys go check out his photo on the roster. He looks like he's about 45. I mean, that's a grown man. That's like a grown man. He's only 6 foot, 225. But he's got good speed, and I'm expecting a lot out of him. But let's go ahead and get into the D line as well.
Yeah, I mean, we went over some of the D line already. Obviously, you know, with Sincere and Isaiah Nixon, I think they're the bona fide starters at edge rusher. But and then we talked about Thomas Collins. I think the other guy that has been, I've heard Frost mention him specifically is Bruno Dahl. He came
Yeah.
over from Akron, yeah, and he was really good at Akron. He's originally from Germany, keeping that Germany pipeline open, which was started by Heupel there. But no, he was really good.
Oh,
He
it
was
started. It started long before that. That started in
right, you, yeah,
1999 when I joined. Yeah,
that's
that
true.
German pipeline.
The German pipeline stays open at UCF. No, but Bruno was third team All MAC last year. Played in all 12 games. I think he led the team in tackles for loss. He's I think expected to back up Sincere there at the edge rusher. So I feel pretty good about him. I think that was a nice pickup out of Akron. Then we talked about Thomas Collins. Then there's guys like Brad Gurley. Then you got some of your more, I would say, projects like an Artavius Jones, right? He was huge 4-star recruit out of Miami. Was ultimately went to Miami, recruited by Florida State. Or a guy like L.A. Jesse Harold, another, South Florida guy. These are more projects, probably more, maybe rotated in late in games or blowouts, things like that. But I think, it's going to be anchored obviously by Sincere and Isaiah Nixon. And then at tackle, we talked about obviously RJ and Horace Lockett I think Lockett is the player I'm probably most excited about.
Lockett is, if he's got some wind, I mean, that was his biggest problem last year, was like he had,
and the injury, obviously. Yeah.
well, yeah, the injury, but when he was playing, right, like they had to rotate him out because he was a force up the middle when he was playing, but they kept having to rotate him out because he didn't have the wind that he needed. And remember, he was injured the year before at Georgia Tech.
Yep.
So having him in there, RJ Jackson is disruptive as well, but he's really a difference maker. Like Lockett's one of those guys that could play on Sundays. But
he reminds me of our guy that went to Texas Tech, who came Auburn, then us, then Texas Tech, he was drafted this past year. Drawing a blank on his name, defensive tackle, big dude. Who was just we lost him to Texas Tech last year. It was like
why am I blanking on him? Because was so upset about that.
Yes,
I know who you're talking about.
But that's who Lockett reminds me of, is someone like that, like a just big disruptive force there. If he could stay healthy, he's going to be a difference. I think he'll be, one of the, like I said, I think he has a chance to be all conference first team.
Lee Hunter. Hunter's who we're talking about.
He reminds me a lot of Lee Hunter.
Yeah. He's that kind of, but I think he's even more, like when he's on, he's more disruptive. Even at Georgia Tech, he was extremely disruptive and was on a bunch of watch lists before he got injured. Like making a lot of noise. He was the anchor of their defense when they first started, making a few runs. He was the one guy that they kind of built around. And so we got him here, and he's a lot. Like he's going to be a lot for opposing offensive lines. The key here is for him to stay healthy, and if he's done enough, and this is where strength and conditioning comes in, is have we done enough to get his wind up so that he can stay in a series longer than 2 or 3 snaps, because literally that's how long they would have him in a series and then have to rotate him out for a couple of snaps and then put him back in. And so as disruptive as he is, and how much of a difference, if you can play around with the downs to the point where you've got him out, that's a problem. Because I don't know honestly what kind of depth we have. Last year we had depth at DT. This year, I don't know what kind of depth we have at DT. If there's, I have a feeling there's going to be, obviously, if he's out, there's a significant drop off. But even with RJ Jackson, I think that there's going to be a pretty steep cliff when it comes to that after those two. Whereas last year we had a lot more depth.
Yep.
Okay. So we've talked about DN, Isaiah Nixon. I think he's going to be stronger than you think probably. Um,
I like
Sincere
that.
Edward. Yeah, it's going to be interesting for me for Sincere. If he's anything like he was in high school, if he's got back to that level of athleticism, he's going to be a problem. Or even early on with Pitt, he's going to be a problem at end because he's got speed and he's got burst. And I don't want to get too much into the whole NFL draft notes on somebody, and you hear somebody talk about um, cliche things, but he really does have a lot of speed off of the edge. And he's not as tall as what we've had at end, or the traditional end, which is usually like the equivalent would be something like a tight end, right? So defensive end, it's going to be 6'4", 6'5", typically. They're going to be 250 to 260 pounds, somewhere around there for a defensive end. Sincere Edwards, he is not as big as what that traditional type of defensive end is, but he's very, very fast off the edge. Anybody else we kind of want to talk about with regard to who we think is going to start? I mean, he's 6'3", 250. He's just a little bit shorter than the average defensive end is, but he's got good size to him and he's got pretty good speed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we know that we talked about the starters up front and at linebacker. I mean, if you talk about the secondary, I mean, my bets right now, I would think the safeties are going to be Damari Henderson and Jaden Williams. I'm pretty confident in that. And then you talked about Caleb Flagg. I think that'll be a guy that backs up Damari, at least initially. And then maybe like a Ty Bartram who transferred over would probably back up Jaden Williams. And then at corner, again, I think Braden Marshall has been the starting nickel now for like 3 years, 4 years. I think
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to stay there. And then Bellamy, there's no question. I mean, he's already getting a ton of preseason all conference honors and all that. I'm pretty confident he'll be one of the starters at corner. And then I would think the other one, I think he's kind of up and down, and some people you kind of either love him or hate him, but Antoine Jackson, I mean, he's been our starting corner, one of our starting corners now for a couple of years. I'm pretty sure he will be across from Bellamy there at the other starting corner spot. And then, the backups there's some depth. I mean, we talked about a Caleb Flagg. Obviously, DJ Bell is someone that's going to be there, I think, in a backup role. You have Ty Bartram, who transferred over. You have Matt Irwin, who also transferred over. Jalen Duffy, a couple names there. Then you have some guys from some of the class last year, like Raheem Stroud, who hasn't really made a name for himself yet, but maybe get some backup time, or some of these like redshirt freshmen, like an Antonio Branch is there as well. But I think the starting five in the secondary is pretty locked up. I mean, maybe Antoine Jackson. I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, here's the thing about Antoine Jackson. There was a couple of, whiffs that he had, but especially the year before last, I mean, he was about as a lockdown corner as you could possibly get. Early on. Yeah. So I think he's a little, hopefully, from a, hey, I'm getting ready for the NFL. He's kind of calmed down a little bit on some of how he plays the position. But he has the ability to lock people down. And there was some stats, and I can't remember, but nobody was going to his side of the field for a reason. And I expect that he will have it more dialed in this year, and I do think that he's going to be one of those guys that's really going to stand out as far as corner is concerned. And it's just like linemen. If you don't hear their name called, they're doing their job, because you're basically shutting down a corner of the field. That's why they call it a shutdown corner. It's not just that you're shutting down the receiver. It's also that you're shutting down that part of the field. So you've got your safety who can shade over to the other side and use the sideline as their friend to limit what the quarterback, but the time that the receiver has, the mobility that he has within his route, and then also the timing that the quarterback has to get that ball out and get it to them. So and you're going to have help. That also allows you to bring someone down in the box more consistently, not just predicated on downs. So it's basically giving you a cheat code because you have an additional player on the field that can be used against everybody else. So same thing we were talking about with Josh Derry. Same thing to be said on the defensive side of the ball if he can be that lockdown corner again this year.
100%.
All right. Let's talk about projections. So we'll talk about regular season projections, and I've just kind of pulled a snapshot together. So this is what major media outlets are saying. The Athletic has us at 7-5. ESPN, FPI, which I threw away a long time ago because of Gus, has us at 6-6, 6-6, 62% chance of a bowl game. Punt and Rally Analytical Model has us 5.7 to 6.3 wins. College Football Network has us at 6-6. Vegas Insider Consensus Market over under 5.5 wins. I would take the over on that. MGM has us at over under 5.5 wins. Yahoo Sports has us under 5.5 wins. Poly Market has us under 5.5. Underdog Dynasty has us 6-6 with an 8-4 ceiling. And then Core College Football Media has us at 6-6. As far as journalists are concerned, Max Olson from The Athletic, he has us at 7-5. Phil Steele has us at 6-6 as a strong bowl contender. His big thing, and this is something that's been Phil Steele, we used to have him on Nightline all the time. One of the big indicators for him is close games. How many close games did we lose? And I'm going to say this till I'm blue in the face. We were a 7-5 team last year. We threw away at least 4 games. Even if you took 50% of those, we were a 7-5 team, potentially an 8-win team. I think, honestly, I said that last year and I'll say it again this year. We just weren't disciplined and found ways to lose. And if this team is better, as in all the positions that we were expecting it to be, it's not a 5-win team. Phil still does say, though, he expects us to win more of those. We were a better team last year than what our records show, but he's still a little dour on us. And I think a lot of that is because we have so many open question marks and how they play together. Pete Flutak from College Football News has a 6-6 baseline is bowl eligibility. Matt Michelle, our local Slantinal reporter, is 6-6 with a bounce back season. Chris Boyle, local guy from Daytona Beach News, says 6-6. Bill Conley from ESPN has us at 6-6, which means he just copied the FBI. And then Jason Williams, I picked him up because he's a regional guy, and he has us at 5-7. So with all that being said, let's go through the schedule real quick. And just no big analysis, but let's go through each one of these games and think what wins and losses are and what you think our projections are going to be for this team. So we've got BCU, UCF versus BCU. That's a win, right? Got to be a dub.
That one is a win, 100%.
As conservative as you are, how about Pitt?
So, I mean, I did a whole win-loss projection thing on my Instagram, so I don't want to stray from that because that's my genuine feelings. I have Pitt as a loss. I don't think Pitt is an amazing team by any means, but they're always just a tough team. They're just always big on the lines. And for me, the biggest thing is just it's on the road. I mean, what did UCF go on what are they on, like a 9-game road losing streak right now? 8-game road losing streak.
I think we're 1-8. We're on 1-8 on the road in the last 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, show me that you can win on the road before I'm not saying Pitt, we're not going and playing Ohio State or something, but like Pitt is tough and they're always tough. They're always in the mix. They're always that like 7 to 8 to 9 win team. That they're always tough. They don't lay down easily, and it's on the road. I think that's a really tough week 2 opponent, especially you're coming from, you look at last year's progression. You had our FCS game, then you had Jack State, then you had UNC at home before you got into conference play. I mean, jumping right into, a tough ACC opponent on the road in week 2, I don't feel good about it. I think it's going to be a close game, but I would say I think that's a loss. And I mean, they just have not proven they could win on the road. And I know it's a different team, it's a better team, but I'm not going to project a win when I just haven't seen that happen yet on the road.
A lot of question marks for this team, but I'm betting on our quarterback. We have a guy that went to the playoff last year and knows how to win and has a different attitude than the last, I don't know, probably 2 years at quarterback position. I'm actually going to bet on us. I think our defense is good enough to come back and hold them down. I don't see anything from Pitt. They lost their top receiver there. That was their guy. So I'm gonna say that's a dub. So I'm gonna say we're 2-0 heading into Georgia State. I think that's a dub, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Georgia State coming back home. This is a Georgia State team. They won 1 game last year. They went 1-11. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that is 100% going to be a win.
All right. Going to be a tough day for my business partner, whose wife is a director over there in the marketing department. So luckily she's on the academic side, so she doesn't have to deal with athletics, but it'll be a tough day for them. UCF versus TCU. A little bit of trouble in Frogtown lately. They had a fight recently within the past week. Had a player that was kicked off the team for that fight, starter, 4 days ago. I think there's more. TCU, as good as their head coach is, he doesn't strike me as someone who has control of a locker room. And that's a pretty bad sign when a week out from the season kickoff, you've got one of your starters that's fighting, putting somebody else in the hospital who took another starter out, by the way, fought with the starter, took him out, injured him for the season. That's not good vibes for TCU. That one's at home. I think that one's a dub as well.
So I also have that as a dub as well. I like it at home. For some of the reasons you said, I think TCU is, they're going through, some stuff in the locker room there. I think I don't think they're, projected to be a top Big 12 team by any stretch. Not necessarily an easy win. I have that down as like a 1-score win, but I think that's a game that UCF closes out at home to, win their conference opener. Absolutely.
All right. What about UH playing Houston?
Yeah. So again, I have this as a loss. It's on the road. Houston's widely actually projected to be one of the best teams in the conference, which I don't like saying that out loud because, there's someone that's been in multiple conferences with us. So when we see
it's the money, Cougs, dude.
The money is the main reason, but that doesn't change my projection. I think I think this is a loss on the road. Again, if this was at home, I might call it a toss up. They beat us at home last year in a toss up game. But yeah, I would say that this is going to be a loss on the road.
What about OSU? A lot of people are picking OSU over us this year. They've got a brand new head coach. They got rid of the I'm a man, Mike Gundy, who did really well for them over the years. But new coach, new staff, new players. What's your thought on that gut reaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair where a lot of teams have been saying that they are going to be one of the more improved teams in the conference. I mean, obviously they were horrible last year. Didn't they? I'm pretty sure they went winless in the conference last year. Yeah, that was last year. They went winless in the conference. We beat them at home. But I do think the streak of dominating Oklahoma State is coming to an end. Again, I think they're going to be much better than they were last year. They brought in basically a new team. The new coach brought in most of his players from his previous stop. And I think this is a loss. Again, a lot of it has to do with the road. I get that they're a team in transition, but I do think they are going to be a lot better. And I just, well, as we go through this schedule, I do have a road win in here, but to me, it's not coming against Oklahoma State.
All right. For me, I'd like to see what OSU does for the first part of the season, but I think they're overhyped. The only thing that kind of gives me pause here is that it's an away game. And until we prove, to your point, away games, I actually think OSU could be better than what Pitt is this year. So that's a question mark for me. If I was going to assign another loss, I think it would be there. We come back. We've got BYU for homecoming. That's an L. I hate to say it.
That's an L. There's no question. That's 100. So I think we hit a 3-game losing streak, but the slide will stop there, which we'll get into. But yeah, BYU, they're nationally ranked already. They're top 25. That's a great squad. They have a great quarterback. Their coach stayed after flirting with LSU and whatever other schools. Yeah, they're going to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the conference. So yeah, that's an L.
Space game with Baylor. I think that's a dub. I think David Aranda's on the hot seat. I think it's going to get so hot he may not last the rest of the season. He's kind of all over the place. He's lost his magic. We kind of saved his job once. I don't think we save it this time. Baylor loses big at the space game at the bounce house.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, UCF cannot lose 2 space games in a row. Last year that was devastating, losing our first space game. But yeah, no, we get back in the win column, end the 3-game skid and beat Baylor.
All right, at Kansas, I think there's some trouble there too as far as coaching and being able to control the locker room. But Kansas has surprised me a few times in the past, but I'm still going to pick against them. They are playing in their renovated stadium at Kansas. So the crowd should be live for that one, but I still think we win at Kansas. What do you think?
I have that as a loss also. We know the stat now. We are winless in the state of Kansas since joining the Big 12. We cannot beat Kansas State or Kansas on the road or at home for that matter. But we have not been able. We've gotten beaten up there pretty bad. I don't think Kansas is going to be great by any stretch, but again, road game, I'm going to pick against UCF on that one.
All right, versus Arizona State. What are you thinking?
Arizona State, that is going to be a good game, and that is where I say UCF gets back in the win column. Arizona State is going to be awful this year. They are going to be probably the worst team in the conference. If it's not them, it's Iowa State. But Arizona State,
I think Iowa State is going to be the worst team in the conference.
Yeah,
they lost Matt Campbell, and he took the whole team with him. So
yeah, I agree. But Arizona State's going to be pretty damn bad. So yeah, I have that as a win. It's at home. UCF wins that game big.
Colorado.
Well, wait, Iowa State's next.
Well, we already just said that they're going to be the worst team in the conference. So
Yeah,
that's a win. So let's move on to Colorado and the Fighting Primes.
Yes, the season finale. UCF finally gets a conference road win. I think we beat Colorado. Also expected to be a bottom 4 team in the conference. They lost a lot. I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to be in the toilet bowl there with ISU and ASU. So we do get to, fortunately, end our schedule with 3, easy games. I put it in quotes because it's not, back in the day when it was like, Tulane and type of easy or ECU or whatever. But no, I do think we win there. So that with my projections, I have us at 7-5 overall and a winning record in the conference of 5-4. So I think for the first time since joining the Big 12, we'll have a winning record. We'll be back in a bowl for the first time since year 1 in the Big 12 and finish, with a 2-win improvement. And then, obviously can't really project if we're going to win the bowl game or not. Don't know who we're going to play, but I think UCF will very much so be in play for an 8-5 season.
I think this team is going to be either an 8 or 9 win team. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people because I don't think the conference is as strong as it has been in the past. And the big thing for me and the big asterisk with all of this is QB, because I think if we lose the QB at some point during the season, it kind of falls apart. We don't have the O-line for the running game to make up for it with a lesser QB. And unless the kid from Boise is as good as what we are hearing for him to be a backup, then he may be able to spell us if we need to for a couple games. The injury, especially at the tail end of the season. I think with our quarterback, I think this is an 8, possibly 9 win team. Our defense is really, really strong. We've got good running backs. We've got an upgrade in wide receiver, and we've got a good QB. So the only, and I hate saying this because you always hear me say you win and lose in the lines and then in the trenches, and that's one of our biggest question marks. But I do think this is with as many close games as we lost last year with that team, I think this team's that much better, especially at the QB position, because even going into the season, it was a 3, quote unquote, 3. We don't have a QB1. Well, we got a QB1 and we've got a darn good one. So I think this is an 8 win at least UCF team in a down year. And I do think we go to the bowl game. So speaking of the bowl games, bowl projections right now, ESPN has us in the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl versus Western Kentucky. The College Football News has us also in that bowl game versus Tulane. Do not really want to see that game, to be honest with you. I don't want to play Tulane this year. They've been, obviously, they lost their head coach to Houston. But they have money and they've been spending, so don't really want to see them. Brett McMurphy actually doesn't have us projected for a bowl game. He has us a 5-7 again this year. Mark Schlarbach from ESPN also has us in the Independence Bowl versus Liberty. So a lot of Independence Bowl love here. 247 has us in the Lockheed Martin Armed Services Bowl versus Army. Don't really want to see Army either, just because we don't have anybody that runs their offense, but our defense should do well against them. Athlon Sports has us in the Serve Pro First Responder Bowl versus UTSA. Pro Football Focus has us in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl versus Minnesota. That would be interesting. I don't think we've ever played Minnesota in the FBS, so that would add another one to our list because we played just about everybody else in FBS. CBS Sports also has us in the Armed Forces Bowl versus Navy. The Athletic has us in the Liberty Bowl versus South Carolina. That would be an interesting one. I think that's a winnable game. And then Pop-Tarts Bowl, College Football Network has us in the Pop-Tarts Bowl versus Louisville. I don't...
So give me the Pop-Tarts Bowl all day.
I was going to ask you which one would you rather be in. With all the hype for the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Pop-Tart Bowl, yeah, it's a bowl we've never played in. It actually, for being a non, whatever they call them now, Holiday Six or game, that's one of the more fun bowls that gets more, I think, national coverage and social media play than any of the other, military bowls or Fenway Park Bowl or any of those. So I think that'd be cool. I mean, if we talk about who you want to play, I definitely want to play another Power 4 school. I mean, I would have a hard time getting amped up against any sort of group of 5 school outside of maybe like a USF, just because it would be like fun to play them again. And in a game that is essentially meaningless, it really holds no weight other than, I guess, your final record. But I'd prefer to play some sort of Power 4 school.
So out of the power schools that are in here, you've got Louisville, South Carolina, Minnesota. Although Navy, I think, counts as a power win legally by the rules. but so Minnesota, South Carolina, Louisville, and that's it. Which of those three would you play? Would you rather
So
play?
I would say definitely not Louisville. We played them a bunch of times, not in a bowl, but we've just played them a bunch of times. Whatever, we've beaten them, they've beaten us. Not too exciting there. Minnesota, that's just like a boring program. They're usually never anything good. They're always kind of bottom tier in the Big Ten. They've had a couple of good years, but you talk about. I would like to play South Carolina, SEC. We played them once in our nearly undefeated year.
And we almost beat them that game.
And that was when they had number 1 overall pick Jadeveon Clowney. So I would love a revenge game. I know it's not as meaningful as a regular season game, but it would be cool. Yeah, like anytime you could notch an SEC win under your belt, it'd be cool. I mean, now and that could. We played Mississippi State in a bowl. We played Florida in a bowl. We played obviously Auburn. We played LSU. So it would be nice to get another SEC win. So yeah, out of those three, hands down, South Carolina is who I'd want to play.
I agree with you. Just I remember how brutally hot that game was against South Carolina. We started coming back in that game as well, and we caused Steve Spurrier to stop coaching football. So that was a win without it being a win.
We actually played them twice, haven't we? I think we played them in our winless season too. And from what I recall, how bad that year was, that was actually a pretty close game. If I recall, we played them on the road because it was a 1-1 I think we had with them. So we were actually 0-2 against them. So we got to get some revenge if we were to play them.
That is interesting. I don't remember. I do believe we played them, but I didn't remember how close that game was.
It was, let's see, 2015. I remember like in the beginning it was kind of a blowout. I think we ended up losing 31-14. So not super close, but I remember kind of coming back at the end a little bit, making it a game. And that was, the year that we didn't win a single game. So and I don't even know who we were throwing out at quarterback, Bo Schneider or someone like that. So it was we played them twice now, so it'd be nice to get some revenge.
Yeah, definitely. Total meetings, actually 5 games. So we played them in 1996 in Columbia, South Carolina. We've only played them once at home. September 7th, 1996, South Carolina 33, UCF 14. September 6th, 1997, South Carolina 33, UCF 31. That was probably one of those SEC games, like Clemson and Auburn, etc., when they got the benefit of the doubt. September 1st, 2005, South Carolina 24, UCF 15. 2013, which is the game we're thinking about, was 28-25, South Carolina. We were driving, just ran out of time. And in 2015, 31-14, South Carolina. So yeah, we owe them one if we get to play. All right. Other news that has kind of come about lately. We've got 2 football related topics to talk about. Is the stadium unveiling. So the stadium, the tower was unveiled as of last week. There was some more to it than that. There were some upgrades that were also made in the cabana and some of the other areas. But what was your overall impression now that it's out in the wild? I assume you've watched some videos of what that looked like on the interior. What's your thoughts on the tower? Number one, I will say this: no matter what your thoughts on the tower are, this is like going from a double wide to like a 3,800 square foot home, right? Because I won't say mansion, but when I was in the tower, we had the tower. I mean, it wasn't wide enough for you to really stand in line at the bar. They didn't have permanent bars. It was bars that they were bringing in and rolling out. And they were small, like a desk size, like standing desk size type bar, right? And it was hot. It was always so hot in there because the air conditioning couldn't keep up with the number of people that were in there. at the time if you were in the club. So or in the tower. So I will say, no matter what, it's a 1,000,000% upgrade. But what were your overall thoughts on what they did with it, the layout, the design, etc. They, you've got only a few club seats left. Most of them are sold out. All the suites are gone. There's some in the wings. John Swift, who is a frequent contributor and actually was on Nightline with us for a while. He has the bar area is named after him. So if you look at that bar, that big central bar that's named after John, so tip of the cap, Mr. Swift. He's also a Porsche guy if anybody's interested. But what were your overall impressions of the bar, the new, or not bar, the tower, the different types of suites? What were your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, UCF needed that upgrade. Like you said, it was really hot. I've been in there a couple times, limited space, not, I don't think super nice for like a Big 12 program, right? So, I mean, look, they dropped 90 mil, right? Or something like that on this. So yeah, I think it's a lot nicer, the layout. They have those sky suites now, which are going something like 10,000 a game. So I think it was a big upgrade. I like it. It looks really nice. I think the stadium, we talked about the stadium for years needing upgrades, right? Hasn't really been too much upgraded since it opened in 07. So I think it was the right move and it looks good. Yeah, I mean, it looks good. I mean, I'm not going to be in there for 10K a game, but it looks good.
Yeah, well, I'm the goal is to be in there for 10K
That is
a
the
game.
goal.
Actually,
that is the goal.
Actually, and I will one up you there. I'd rather be in the boxes because the thing about the Sky Suites, I mean, it's an okay concept, but it's basically an overhang with 12 chairs and some tables for you to watch the game on the sidelines 35 and over, right? So if I'm going to be in that area, I don't know if the upper club area, tower club area is not the better buy as far as the seats are concerned, but again, you don't have access to the tower anymore if you're sitting up there. So the tower itself, for me, the design was really, really nice. I like the central bar area. It really does look like a P4. It more than tripled the depth of it from the exterior. It looks really, really nice. I was a little worried about the light bars going over UCF's logo, but that looks good. The interior, little touches here and there, like the little knights for the space helmet people with the knights for the bathrooms.
Right.
From the press box area, it's huge compared to what it was before. We didn't get to see the Galaxy Club, which is the top level club, which is all the way at the top. So I'd like to see what that looks like. But the base club area, I mean, it's really, really nice. It's a little dark for my taste as far as the amount of wood that they used and browns. But outside of that, it looks really, really nice. The experiences themselves, I'm not a fan of paying $10,000 to be on the Sky Suites. So just because for me, having an attendant there and a private bar, I'll go back to the cabana where I usually sit versus the Sky Suites. Yes, the shade is nice, but not so much. Justin Nikolai says he's super excited for the season. We definitely need a winning season. Both of us agree. If you missed it, Justin, both of us agree that we will have a winning season. It's just a question of how many wins over that 6-6 that we're going to be. The other nice thing is we can now, and this was just announced, we knew this was going to happen, but you can now walk all the way around the stadium again. In the past, remember, they kind of blocked off for the club areas. For the Tower Club, they blocked off the walkway, so you could not walk all the way around 360 around the stadium. You can do that again. They did add some extra elevators, which is nice. Free beer in the cabana this year. So I don't know how. I don't know if that's until supplies last. But the biggest takeaway for me was the Orange County Commissioner's comments. So UCF, if you've been kind of following along with the TDT, and we've been kind of talking about that lately, is UCF got that $90 million to build the tower. The Citizens Committee did not recommend UCF to move forward. There's been a lot of controversy in the city, especially with the TDT lately, about why ROI was not considered in the decisions that the committee made to basically say these projects should go to the commissioners for review. There was a lot of back and forth. It's even though UCF didn't quote unquote make the cut for that round, the county commissioners and specifically Uribe was very vocal during the meeting about why UCF wasn't considered. There was a lot of noise about the ROI, so I think UCF has been lobbying hard. If you've been watching, they've been talking a lot about the tower, and also spreading the love for the commissioners. They had them up on stage. Mayor Demings said, Orange County Mayor Demings, which I did not know was actually a UCF student at one time. He ended up graduating from FSU, but started at UCF, and talked about the approval process and how they're expecting many more buildings and all of this other stuff, and that the new commissioner who's coming on board, that he's expecting him to approve as well. But Uribe, who was a big proponent in us getting the dollars in 2023, was back at it in the meetings, talking about how UCF should be, and she's also a UCF grad and alum, by the way. Bringing that back to the commissioners. So that's not dead yet. You may have seen a lot of noise there, but they do have the ability to consider other projects. Some of that process was just completely asinine. Most of it was, well, you should be able to fundraise on your own to do that, and that charge was led by a UF grad, unsurprisingly, which made the recent win by the women's soccer team against the Swamp Puppies from Gainesville that much more sweeter. But bottom line is, the tower is beautiful on the inside. If you can afford it, it's a great experience. It's much better. The way things are set up, what you eat, where you eat, the views that you have, and it's also a space that's set up for events. So I think it's worthy of a Big 12 tower. I think the rest of the stadium needs some upgrades now. That's coming. The other big thing, as a reminder, we talked about this several episodes ago, was they moved the lights from the light pole. Oh, there you go. They moved the light poles from the tower side of the stadium to the east side of the stadium. So now we have 4 lights there. So in between that and the lighting that's up on the on top of the tower, there should no longer be any shadows on the field. Now, I think overall, this was much needed, even just to be able to show that. I think it'll be interesting because softball's on the docket for the current TDT ask, as is soccer, the soccer complex, and softball's kind of the linchpin, because in order for they were asking for $23 million for the softball team. In order for the softball team, or the soccer and the track projects to start, softball has to move. So softball has to move first, track then has to move, and then soccer can get its new complex. So there's a lot riding on that. We're expecting in mid-September to get some more information about that, so keep an eye on that as well. Last topic that I want to talk about is the NFL players that are coming back to play in college football. So the Lane Train did what the Lane Train does and disrupted the SEC, and LSU signed several players that had played in the NFL, not like had careers, but had signed with the NFL this past year with teams, and were coming back to play for LSU. There were 3 to 4 players, and you saw a plethora of these guys starting to renounce after the preseason their positions in the NFL to try to come back. So that started a firestorm. And even Greg Sankey, who is a proponent of the advantages that the SEC has, led the charge basically that says this isn't okay and is banning participation by anyone who's had a prior contract in football only. Remember, that doesn't include basketball because we've seen the same thing in basketball. Banning those players from coming back. And he's serious about it. He said if schools violate the SEC's professional sports rule, it will result in 50% season suspension for head coaches. 50% of that sport's annual operating budget gets cut. SEC voting privileges on business matters are revoked. So they're serious about it. Notre Dame has followed suit, as has the Big Ten, although their challenges are different. Brett Yormark came out today and has also declared that the Big 12 has voted to adopt that ban, but has extended it to all sports. So it's not just for football. The Big 12 is also doing this for basketball, football, and all other sports that are under the banner. So there we go again with the balloons. So that's interesting. I don't know why we're jumping ahead and doing it for basketball, since considering we're a basketball conference. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Is this a good sign? I mean, this opens the door for some G5s, I think, or G6s now, to sign some of these players coming back. Well, if the power conferences, and the ACC hasn't said anything yet, if the power conferences decline, because this is done at a conference level, not an NCAA level, so that they keep out of yet another lawsuit. Conferences are saying that we're not allowing these folks to participate. If all the power schools do that, then some of these G6 schools can sign some of these folks. For example, the Cows are spending a lot of money right now on their NIL. They could welcome some of these guys in from the NFL and could afford it. Now, the vast majority of G6 schools can't, right? Because they don't have the budgets for NIL to pay these guys. But schools like the Cows do. So there will be some schools that could take advantage of that. I do think it's the right thing to ban them from playing. And the reason it's being done at the conference level is to keep them out of lawsuits. But I did want to get some quick thoughts from you on that as well.
I mean, yeah, I think the whole concept of a guy went pro and then coming back to play college is just, it's absurd. It's, that's ridiculous notion. Like, it shouldn't even be a thing. I mean, that's, once you go pro, you shouldn't be able to come back. But yeah, I mean, I like you said, I think,
well, part of your contract for going pro, at least in the NFL for football, is that you have to renounce your eligibility for college.
Exactly. So you can't just be like, oh no, I want to go back. It can't work that way. It's absurd. It's like, I keep saying this, but college football just went from so strict to the complete opposite. The pendulum swung the other way. And it's we just need to get more into the middle and just the things that make sense, do them. The things that don't make sense, the whole 5-year thing and getting rid of the red shirt. Great. That was great. That's things like that we need to do more of. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It does, I think we saw now the Big 12, the Big 10, the SEC banned it. It does open up the door for a group of fives now. I mean, if you got a guy that, I don't know, played at whatever, Ohio State or something, went undrafted, but was, decent or whatever, now can come back and play for a USF or something like that. Yeah, that's going to be a big win, especially if they were in the NFL weight room for a few months or a year or whatever it is. And and then they get to come back and play at like a USF or an FAU or whatever, yeah, I could see that being very attractive to both the school and the player. I mean, the player probably is going to make more money in college because they're not cutting it in the NFL, or they wouldn't be leaving. And then for that, a school like that, they can get a talent that is going to be, would be hard for them to get out of high school or even in the transfer portal in college, right? So, but I think it's ridiculous, like you said. I mean, part of the contract, I don't think they should be. If you've signed with an agent, you've signed with an NFL team, you've taken any sort of snap or practice or anything within an NFL team, you shouldn't be able a couple months later to go play for USF or whatever school. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting is the Big 12 took the step to say the same for basketball. I think that's the bigger storyline. The SEC and the Big 10 have not. And there are several players who've come back from playing in the Euro leagues or have played on two-way contracts that have come back and signed up for college basketball. Speaking of which, by the way, Keyshawn Hall reunites with St. John's booster and UCF booster at St. John's. So he will be playing for St. John's next year. All right. That being said, I think that's the thing to watch, is what that does for basketball and what do other people do for that? And do they stick to that for basketball as well? Because I think that's been going on now for the past couple of years and nobody said a thing. So interesting stuff. I think Lane Train hits the SEC, disrupts the entire model, and you see what you got.
Yep, that's right.
All right, let's get into a little bit of listener love. So last time we had Mikey L1 Kessett. Sorry about that, Mikey. He says, kid, talking about Rocco Marriott and the short we did on him, said kid can take over a game. Best QB locally, KC Metro in years. He's from there. And I said that is the hope. He will get his chance next year. The new guys are already getting positive feedback. They just have to adjust to the speed of the game. Literally takes a year. KZ can absolutely get the mental part out of them. We were missing that with Gus. Thank you for watching and commenting. Next, we have Mark Soskin, our good friend and my former professor, who says Tampa State College. This was in response to the short about a rivalry with Cows being forced by the state. He says Tampa State College fell 2 decades behind UCF by not building an on-campus stadium. Agreed. They thought they had a fan base when they lacked success and weren't part of the BCS anymore. They found out the base was transient. Now UCF earned it through time, commitment, and resurging after an 0-for season against Marshall. Good to see you. In-state rivalries. This one was our short about in-state rivalries at the Kurt Russell 4007. You need a relegation system, and the entire thing is fixed. Make the final 16 in your FCS, your FBS, bottom ranked in your new regional conference, one of the 16 down to FCS. Hey, Kurt, thank you for commenting. How would you make that work politically and financially, as schools are major revenue drivers for regions and or states? I don't think any of the states would ever allow that to happen. I think it hurts the football system and their state universities for the most part. So I don't think that would ever happen. That being said, shout out to all of you for doing that and continuing the conversation. Also, shout out to Slade Humphrey, our newest follower. And as always, just as a reminder, we do this for you. So please make sure you comment. Obviously, like and subscribe, tell your friends, but more importantly, comment so that we can make that part of the show or talk about your comment. Before we move on, I do want to give a quick shout out. Gert Garman, for those of you that haven't been UCF fans for a really long time, she's been here since the early parts of the program. She has been with the athletic department at launch. She's retired now, but she's struggling with some health challenges. So please keep her in your thoughts. She did most of grassroots marketing, guerrilla marketing for UCF, both on campus and off. One of the biggest UCF fans you'll ever see. Kind of a staple for UCF football, just like Manny Messinger. If you've been following along there, know who that is. So please keep her in your thoughts. Obviously, Dolly was big news today, yesterday as well. But just for Gert, she is a icon for UCF in this football program and its success. So please make sure you keep her in your thoughts as well. That being said, for our folks that joined today, those that are watching online, please make sure to like, share, comment, etc. Because we'd love to hear from you. I'm going to ask you this quick, Alan. We've got about 6 minutes left. Do you have an Alan's oxymoronic stat of the week?
I do. I absolutely do.
All right. What is it?
So obviously UCF season opener here, just about a week away. So since 2000, the Knights have played an FCS opponent in week 1 9 times. So this upcoming Thursday will be their 10th time when they go ahead and take on Bethune-Cookman. In those 9 games, UCF has an average win margin of 37 points, exactly 37 points. They have they've included 4 shutouts in that. They've had 2 62-0 shutouts and then 4 total shutouts. And 6 times they have won by a margin of 30 or more points, including 31, 62, 38, 62, 46, and 54. Their closest one was a 28-24 win. They had a very narrow win in one of those FCS games. But overall, it's been a dominant performance. And, almost roughly about a third of the years since the millennium hit, we play a FCS opponent in our opener. So let's look to get at least a 37-point win to keep that margin of victory at 37 when we go on and take on BCU next week.
And we'll have one more show as we start our analysis, our in-depth game analysis, although we all believe that obviously we win that game handily. That being said, thank you for that this week. And let's round out with a quick update on other UCF sports that Alan and Andrew do not watch, and probably Trey too, but that's okay. All right, so we do have other UCF sports that have kicked off their seasons, folks. UCF men's soccer kicked off their season with exhibitions against Daytona State, Jacksonville, and North Florida. The regular season has begun as well. They're currently 1-1. They beat Boston U 1-0 and tied FAU on 0-0. FAU traditionally has a good program. Next up, though, is the Cows on Friday night at 7 p.m. at home. So if you've got the opportunity, go check out the latest installment of the War on I-4 series for men's soccer. And immediately after that, though, they've got a tough one. They're going to be playing number 16 Clemson. UCF women's soccer has been doing nothing but racking up wins, and they are currently ranked. They went from unranked to number 14 in the country, and they're on fire. They're 3-0. They started their season with exhibition games against Jacksonville and Florida Gulf Coast. After that, they beat the ranked Swamp Puppies from Gainesville 4-3 in dramatic fashion at home. So they were actually behind. And we have been, for those of you that are keeping score in the Olympic sports, we have been dominating, and baseball, we've been dominating the Swamp Puppies now for a while. This is actually a very, very good squad, though. This is not an easy win at that win at home. They actually went and lost to us, and then they broke a 36-game unbeaten streak by number 3 FSU by beating them 3-1. So No slouches, won that game. Followed that game up by going to LSU, number 21 or number 16 at the time, LSU, and beating them at home. Now, that doesn't sound too exciting, but for your consideration, they've only had 3 losses at home in the last 2 years. So they're a very, very tough team to beat at home. They were number 16. They are now number 21, and we are number 14. So excellent work by the ladies as far as women's soccer is concerned. We'll yet to see how men's soccer fares. We've got a good coach. They've done fairly well. That's all for us tonight. Thank you for following, liking, and subscribing. Tell your friends. Go Knights, and
Charge on.
all right, this is going to be a quick one because Josh isn't here and we've got like 8 seconds left. So I'm going to shut down the stream now.